everybody here for our town board meeting? We all set? Could we all stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance? Nancy?
Father God, we come before you tonight asking for your wisdom, knowledge, and discernment for those representing us to know your will from Princetown. We ask your peace and unity that only you can give. Thank you for working your will in our town. Bless those who represent us and their families. We pray, as your word says, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. We declare this for our town. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please remain standing for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll open up the meeting at 7:06. Privilege of the floor. Oh, excuse me, could you read the roll?
Councilman Pavoldi?
Here.
Councilman Giacoruso?
Here.
Councilman Gray?
Here.
Councilwoman Mora? Here. Supervisor Esposito?
Present. Also present is our attorney, town attorney Gerard Parisi. Okay. Privilege of the floor at every scheduled town board meeting.
Lou, we have John go,
Pardon?
the AUP. Can we have John go first?
For the, he came in for the county. He was gonna give his report.
Oh, okay.
John.
Yeah, oh, yes, okay.
I thought we did, but in case he wants to go,
Okay, well, let me read the privilege of the floor first. At every scheduled town board meeting, the public has the right to address the town board during a portion of the meeting referred to as privilege of the floor. Members of the public should restrict their comments to items of town business, although there is no official time constraint. Speakers should be considerate of others so that all interested members of the public have an opportunity to be heard. There should be one portion of the meeting dedicated to privilege of the floor near the beginning of each meeting. All remarks, questions shall be addressed to the board. No person shall enter into discussion with a person having the floor. Council members may address any comments during the portion of the meeting referred to as council member comments. Privilege of the floor is opened up at 7:08, and you'd like to address
Just go ahead with the report.
Yes.
Thank you all for having me here tonight. Just a quick introduction to myself. My name is John Taflowski. I'm a partner at Cusack Company in Latham. Worked there for 19 years, been a partner since 2017. And I was contacted by Ben in regards to initially completing an audit. And when Ben had contacted me a couple months ago, I said to Ben, I said, hey, do you guys require an audit? Do you need an audit? Or is it just something that you want? Or, I can sell you an audit, we can complete an audit. But typically what smaller municipalities like to do is they're really looking for some guidance on their internal controls. So what I offered to Ben was to say that, hey, why don't we complete an agreed upon procedures engagement, which is going through your internal controls, reviewing them, and then developing recommendations on those internal controls.
Could you speak up just a little bit?
I'll speak up, okay.
Yes.
So what we're doing is we're developing this agreed upon procedures engagement to review your internal controls processes, so your financial processes, any other processes that we feel are significant to the town. So what we did is we decided on this AUP agreement. We were on site, it was myself and another staff member on the 4th of May. We came through and we interviewed several individuals in the town who were involved in the financial processes. And I wanted to extend my appreciation to the board, to all the individuals who helped us during that process. They were very helpful, they were very timely, and they were really concerned with getting us the correct information and helping us complete this engagement. So we really do appreciate everything that they did for us. This report here that you'll find in draft format, what we do is after all of our internal reviews, all of our interviews, what we did is we developed this report that has 3 different levels of findings. So we have what's called material weakness. That's the highest level of a deficiency that we can note during this process. That's considered a gap in your internal control systems that could lead to a material weakness in your overall financial conditions. We also have a significant deficiency, which is considered less in scope than a material weakness. It's less significant of a deficiency than material weakness, but it still warrants the attention of governance overall. So if we were completing an audit, what I would typically do is I would say, these are comments that elevate to the level where I need to tell governance about this in my final report. So material weakness would be something that would be a glaring deficiency, something that really needs to be fixed right away. And we also have what's called management comments, so just general housekeeping items that we noted when we went through our interviews and through our internal control processes. And this report shows we have those separated by material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, and also management comments. You know, Ben, I didn't know if you wanted me to go through and review all of these comments. I mean, I could skim through them pretty quick if that's something you'd like to do, to just go through my recommendations there. Yep. So the first recommendation that we had, the only material weakness that we had, in going through your accounting records, what we had noted was that your records are on a hybrid cash and accrual method basis. So they're not fully accrual. There are some items towards the end of the year, typically in your cycle 13 and 14 for your checks and receipts. What's happening with those is those are being processed up to, you know, a couple months afterwards, and then those items are then being backdated, put back into the previous year, but they're not done in the proper way. They should be moved back, but they're not being done via the mechanism of a full accrual basis. So they should be sent back as accounts receivable, accounts payable. Those items that's a really easy fix, but it's something that should be done on a monthly basis. And this was something that I spoke with your bookkeeper about, in that when you go through that final process of the phase 13 and 14 cycles, bring those items back as accounts receivable, accounts payable, so that your books are on a full accrual basis. And it also will help you to, having your books on a full accrual basis, one, it's required, and then two, it also helps you better gauge your finances overall at the town. You're better able to see, here's my total assets, here's my total liabilities at any given point in time. The significant deficiencies that we noted, the first one that I noted was the accounting policies and procedure manual. The town currently does not have a written policies and procedures manual for their accounting. So for typically what this would be is this would be for all your major processes. How do we process disbursements? How do we process receipts, our payroll? You have all these processes in place, but they're not written and they're not documented formally at the town. So one of the first things that we would do, if we came in an audit, we were completing a new audit, we would come in and we would look at, first, where's your accounting policy and procedures manual? How do you process transactions? What do you do with these transactions? Who's involved in these processes? And that's something that we found to be our first significant deficiency. Our second comment was you have an established code of ethics and conflict of interest policy, but we don't feel like this is being renewed on an annual basis. So typically what you would do, it seems that you're following it, you review it when you initially start, when board members start, when employees start, but we feel this is something that should be attested to on an annual basis. Have everybody go through, recertify, review that, tweak the code as needed as well. The third comment that we noted was your record retention policy. We do find that the town is following the state-issued guidelines for record retention policy, but they're not always purging records in a timely manner. So it seems like there could be multiple years of records that could be disposed of or gotten rid of, and we feel like that's not being done in a timely manner. It's not a major glaring deficiency, but that's something that older records should be cycled out, destroyed, with a certified company. And so those records aren't laying around with access to be either misappropriated or, they could be, it kind of leaves you open to a little bit of risk there as well. The fourth significant deficiency that we had was the review of bank reconciliations. Your bank reconciliations are being completed on a timely basis, but what we found is that we feel that the board or an outside member, somebody outside of the financial statement process, is not reviewing those and signing off on those on a monthly basis. So typically what we would want to see is that a member of the board or somebody outside of the financial process is reviewing those bank reconciliations and the statements as well, signing off on those. It's a good habit to get into, just to have somebody who has nothing to do with any of the transactions go through, review the transactions, make sure that there's no stale checks on the bank reconciliation, there's no stale items, there's nothing that's long outstanding that needs to be reviewed either. The next section of the report was the management comments. These are considered more housekeeping items. These are smaller, less significant items, but there's something that, these are things that we noted during our review that we felt we should have brought to your attention and something that you could help to improve your internal control systems. The first comment was considering the use of a positive pay system. So positive pay, if you're not familiar with it, is when you provide the bank with a list of checks that you've cut, and what they have to do is they have to match those up to their list, so they won't cash any checks or they'll flag them. So for example, if I try to write myself a check and send it through the town's records, if that's not on the master list, they would bounce that check, they would hold it in quarantine, and they wouldn't cash that check. That's something that maybe your bank might charge you a bit for, but it is a service that should be available, and they could go through that with you as well to, to improve your internal controls there. The second comment was to establish a fraud reporting mechanism. It didn't seem like the town has an adequate mechanism for somebody to anonymously report fraud, waste, abuse. There could be instances of harassment at the town, something that somebody can anonymously report any of these instances that they see, whether they be a town member, a taxpayer, and more importantly, employees. If there's something going on that somebody needs to know about, but they might not feel comfortable, this would be a good mechanism, either via an anonymous email, or you could have something set up on your website that would allow them to anonymously send an email through there, or a hotline, something like that could work as well. In a lot of our audits, if we ever do find instances of fraud, which it's really infrequent, we don't find it a lot, but I would say 90% of the time, it's somebody who is telling us something that they don't feel that they can tell their superior. So what they'll do is they'll come to us as the auditors. We send around, during our audit, we send around random fraud inquiries to employees, and they will actually write back and say, hey, I think this is going on, you might want to look at this. But they might not say that to their superiors or to anybody else because they just don't feel comfortable doing it. So that comment there was something that we felt you could implement as well. Comment 3 was cross-training of employees. This is very common for smaller municipalities where you might have one bookkeeper, and you have your town clerk, you have not a lot of different individuals, where a much larger municipality will have an entire staff that does nothing but accounts payable and payroll. In smaller municipalities, you don't always have the ability to cross-train your employees, so you have one bookkeeper who's been doing it for you for a long time, and going through all the transactions, but if that person were to fall ill, and had to take an extended leave of absence, can somebody just walk into that position and know what they're doing? And I think this comment overlaps with the accounting policy manual. Having detailed written steps of how you process your transactions would allow somebody from the outside to come in and say, okay, I can work through these programs, I know how to use these programs. When we interviewed your bookkeeper, one of the things that I noted was she was using a payroll system that I've never seen before. Not to say that it's not good, but it's something that I think is more of an obscure program. It works for your town, but somebody from the outside might not know how to use that program. QuickBooks is a very easy to use program. A lot of people use it, very easy to get training on it. That program might be a little more difficult for somebody to get cross-trained on. Our fourth comment was for your fire company contracts. We did note that you have 2 contracts with volunteer fire companies, but it didn't appear to us that anybody was going and reviewing those, any of the detail of the transactions that they're partaking in, whether that be, ultimately the receipts is one check coming in, but their ultimate disbursements, a good rule of thumb is to go every once in a while, even on a biennial basis, go to the fire companies and say, hey, I want to see your records, I want to see a detail of the checks you cut, I want to see a detail of your accounting, and go through and do a surprise inspection, just to see, 1, are they using the funds in a prudent manner, and then 2, are they using the funds, or are they squirreling them away in equity, are they holding them aside? That's always a good thing to let them know that you're looking at them as well. Comment number 5 was on your employee handbook. The current employee handbook that you have is from August of 2003. Not a lot of employees at your town, so it might work for you now, but our recommendation is ultimately just to go through that employee manual, make sure that it's updated for current policies. This could include policies that, updates for New York State Department of Labor, updated COVID policies. If there's anything that you feel should be in that employee handbook, it'd be a good time to go ahead and update those. Our 6th comment was on revenue reconciliation. So one of the items that we noted during interviews is that there's a detail that can be brought from your accounting system for your town clerk revenues. The bookkeeper is not in the process of reconciling that to her books overall. We feel that the transactions, we didn't feel that there was any issues with the transactions getting in the system, but a good internal control is to go through and reconcile those transactions as they're coming out of the system. So from the clerk system to the accounting system, do those records match? It's a good way to identify if any revenue was not reported or underreported, or perhaps it was overreported as well. Pilot agreements, during our interviews we also noted that you may be coming up on a new pilot agreement if you haven't already with a local business. It didn't sound like you had any pilot agreements in effect right now, but one of the items that we always recommend to our smaller municipalities especially is if you have pilot agreements with outside companies, designate an individual to go through those transactions, those agreements. They can be very lengthy in detail, just to make sure that the payments are being received timely, that you're going through all the different aspects of that agreement as well, to make sure that you're being paid and that, the amounts are that they're sending over to you. The eighth comment that we had was on your lease agreements. We did know that you have one lease with the New York State Police next door. It did sound like this lease was coming to an end, in a sooner time than later. But if there's any leases that are being entered into by the town, you should also designate an individual to go through and make sure that you're being paid on a timely basis. Are we getting paid based on the schedule overall? Is there any issues with the facility? Designate one person who's going through and following all those transactions. I'll try to skip through these. I know you guys are kind of limited on time. So number 9 was for your court fees. We did know when we talked with the clerk over at the Justice Department that they have an ability to track all the fines and penalties that the town has in their system, but those are not being put onto the financial records. So we do have the ability to track that. Ultimately, these would be the long outstanding fees, fines and penalties that would be deferred into the liability. So it would have no overall impact on the bottom line of your finances, but these items could be put onto your books so you know how much you have outstanding and whether those are collectible or not, or items that you should get rid of. With the new federal ARPA money that came because of COVID, the town did receive some money from that. And while it's infrequent that the town receives federal funding, federal grants, it didn't appear that you have a process to monitor the compliance of these grants. So federal grants have an entire system of compliance detail, compliance requirements that are required to be followed for each different grant. And I did leave a link there for different CFDA numbers that you can look up based on your grants, if you get them in the future, to be able to follow those and have an individual in charge of maintaining the compliance for those grants. Comment number 11 was on internal audits of separate departments. One thing that we did notice in our interviews as well was that you have your separate water department and sewer department bank accounts, and it appears that they have control over those bank accounts and nobody's really going to look at those transactions. They're just being sent over to the bookkeeper on a monthly basis or bi-weekly basis or however they're being sent over. So what we were recommending is that somebody would in charge of going to those separate departments that you have and doing maybe a surprise internal audit. Just look at a set of transactions. Are they being handled properly within your internal control processes? If you need a dual signature on checks, if you need any additional documentation that should be required to be included with those items, that's being done. And the last comment that we had was on your overall reserves. We did note that you have a small capital reserve in your general fund. This comment here was just to say that we feel that you should go through and have a reserve policy at the town. So if you're going to establish reserves, are you going to, how are you going to do that? What's your process for doing that? There is a whole entire OSC guideline on establishing reserves for municipalities, what they can do, how they should fund those reserves, and ultimately track those reserves as well. Now I know overall this seems like there was a lot of comments, so we had a lot of recommendations, but in doing the AUP and why I recommended it to Ben overall was that we could really go through, interview all the individuals, and we're kind of, think of this as the kitchen sink. We're throwing every single thing that we can find at you. Whether you implement these or not is ultimately up to you, but we wanted to give you everything that we noted from an outside independent standpoint. Overall, even in an audit, we're not issuing an opinion on your internal control, so that will never be part of an audit, but overall, opinion aside, I feel like the internal controls of your town are actually really good for a small municipality. A lot of times when we go to small municipalities or not-for-profit organizations, they only have a couple people. They don't have the budget to be able to have an entire man staff, full-time staff to complete all these items. So I feel that with what you have here, the resources that you have, your internal controls are really strong. And these items here shouldn't be a negative on your internal controls overall, but just more ways that you can improve on your internal controls if you were to implement these recommendations. So at that point, if you wanted to ask me any questions on our process overall or any of these recommendations, this report doesn't get filed with any agencies. It's only for your own internal purposes. But if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them this time.
Ben?
Did you already send us the final draft?
No, this was just the draft. So this was ultimately just to see if there was any differences of opinion or anything that was incorrect that was in here.
Yeah, I saw your email.
Going through the interviews, we might not have everything documented, 100%. But Yeah, I feel like ultimately we went through, I went through those items with Isla,
Yeah.
a couple items that we had, this is ready to be issued in final. So if you ultimately approve the report, we can issue this in final and then get that out to you this week.
Appreciate all the work you did. I'm hoping, it's up to our supervisor, of course, but maybe we'll have a special meeting or executive session when we get the final draft so that we can review all of it together as a board and determine what, what we want to act on first, if anything.
Yeah, Jim, ultimately, this is really like a stepping stone to an audit.
Right.
So to go through and do an audit without going through and revising your internal controls and improving them is really kind of putting the cart before the horse.
Right.
So this is really good that if you go through and implement these items, consider them at least down the road if we want to go ahead and do an audit, a full audit with financial statements. This would be very helpful to limit those comments that go out into the general public.
Thanks for all your work, appreciate it.
If there's any questions, you can get my contact information from Ben.
Great.
Thank you again.
How often do you recommend doing a complete audit
That's really
for
up
a
to.
small town like this?
Really what I do, Lou, is I don't recommend a small municipality has an audit. I just don't think that it's gonna provide you with the information that you're looking for. Unless it's required for some reason, and if you've received a lot of federal funding, get up into that single audit category where you're now required to have an audit. Unless it's required, I think an AUP is the best, you have the best bang for your buck kind of, because we're going through and we're actually going through all of your internal controls, which is that's what's gonna give you the most headache. If you don't know what your cash balance is, ultimately, you're gonna have financial problems down the road that are gonna blossom out and make things a lot worse in other areas. So going through and knowing that you have a good feel for your internal controls, you have somebody outside of your process, because it's easier for somebody inside to say, yeah, everything's operating fine. When you have somebody coming from the outside, they can say, wait a second, this is not normally how municipalities do this. I generally wouldn't recommend an audit to you. I don't think it's worth the money for you to be able to spend that money on a full-blown audit, but if it were something that you wanted to do down the road, maybe even on a biannual basis, that's something you could do. Or you could do a step-down engagement to a review. We wouldn't be issuing an opinion on your financial statements, but a review is more analytical procedures. You would have a set of financial statements as well.
You said that we should have someone else that would be able to handle the books in the case of our bookkeeper being absent, sick, whatever. Is it, we do have an accountant that's on our town board. Is it possible that a member of our board would be able to act as the bookkeeper in an absence and learn?
Yeah, I think
Is that something that is possible?
I think it would be, as long as it wasn't on a full-time basis. If it was on an emergency basis, to have that person cross-train, because if somebody were to go out, if your bookkeeper were to go out on extended leave, you still gotta process payroll. You're gonna have people at the door, right as soon as they're supposed to get their check, saying, where's my check? Vendors are gonna want their checks. And it's gonna create a lot of problems for you if you have that gap in your internal control system. So I think you could do that, have that person in there for emergency, in times of emergency, but ultimately you would want somebody else who's a full-time employee here and not part of governance to be able to handle those transactions. Somebody who could at least process payroll in an emergency situation or get checks out.
Well, in a small town like we have, we're limited in our options of having somebody to step in. And like I said, being a small town, we do have you are certified as an accountant, correct?
I'm not a CPA, but I'm an accountant.
Accountant that would be able to step in if she could learn it. And I just don't want to have any conflict of interest with her being on the town board and also being the bookkeeper.
Well, I think on a full-time basis, you definitely wouldn't want to do that, but on an emergency basis, you could do that. And even in that basis, if you were to go to that level where you needed somebody to step in for you from the board, have another board member review everything that they're doing. You always want a second set of eyes and everything. You want somebody else reviewing what that person's doing as well. So you wouldn't want it for a full-time solution, but there's a lot of people who do work part-time. You could have come in and really what you want to do now is, if you sense if you have any inkling that your bookkeeper might be moving on, or if they were to ultimately retire, you always run into that situation where somebody might be retiring or they're just not going to do that work anymore. They kind of give you some cues, they'll lead you in on it. I didn't sense any of that, when I was interviewing the bookkeeper, but ultimately, you know, the best time to do is when that bookkeeper's still here and they can train that person. So they can go through and cross-train that person on all systems. Here's everything that I do on a daily basis, and then she can step right into that role. Or he or she can step into that role.
Could I be trained to do it on an emergency basis, or would that be
I think,
just on my books?
I think you would be the best option to do that, just because you're already, you know, in the finances of the town to begin with. So you know the systems, you're working with the same systems. I think that would make sense as well, but, you know, anything to get it done in an emergency situation.
I do have the time to learn it anyway, so if I learned it, and then if God forbid something happened and I took it and did it, then maybe we could have Nicole also just review what I'm doing, just to make sure that, because I have a second set of eyes. Isla and I exchange eyes on our books, so that way somebody else is not just me.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
You would be willing to do that?
I'll do it.
Yeah, you know, Lou, I think that makes the most sense. What Crystal said is to have her do it and have Nicole review it, because that would be a good segregation of duties, because she could actually do the work and then she could review it from an outside independent standpoint. You really just want to have no conflict of interest. You don't want anybody from the town coming up and saying, well, why is this person on the board full-time here at your office, cutting checks and having access to bank accounts? You really don't want that outside of an emergency basis, but COVID really showed us the need for that, because people were immediately out all of a sudden, people were sick, people weren't available, and transactions still had to get processed, so a lot of places were scrambling as to what to do. So this comment always makes it in our reports for these AP engagements.
We do not have pilots in our town, since we don't have a town tax. We do have one host agreement in place right now. Of course, we haven't collected anything. The project's probably not gonna, I know it's not gonna be done this year. Again, it'll be the 4th year, but does that, since we don't have pilots, does a host agreement come in? You know what a host agreement is, correct?
I don't know.
Similar to a pilot, we get paid on a regular basis. We don't have a tax, we have no tax hierarchy here, so in order to pay us, they have to pay us through a host agreement. So it's kind of like a pilot, only it's just not, it's not done through taxes.
So that would be a similar engagement, correct? Where you would be receiving money that's
We
not
would be
considered
receiving
tax,
money on a
but it's
regular basis
ultimately
per
income, yes.
contract, yes.
Right. So I guess that's what that comment was for, is just if you have agreements like that you should be getting paid on, make sure that they're paying you timely, and also according to the pilot agreement. So in a lot of our audits, the large municipal audits, when we're going through and we're looking at the pilot agreement, some of those get very detailed. There's a lot of different things going on, how much they change from year to year based on a formula. So just to make sure that somebody's reviewing those, going through and saying, okay, this is what we should be paid this year, this is what we've gotten paid, and if we're not, is somebody going through and collecting.
Ours are pretty simple, it's
Yeah.
straightforward, simple payment, set price per year, so it's not real complicated.
Right, right. You know, as I said before, Jim, your controls are really good here. So I was stretching to get some comments for you to try to find what I could to help you out, but ultimately, I think for a small municipality, you're really, internal controls are very strong.
So that's good to hear.
We have never had a complete audit of our town. We did have a controller, the state controller come in at one point, I don't know, it was about 8-10 years ago, and do a little audit on it. It really wasn't a complete audit, just to look over our books. That was the last time that anybody has ever looked over our books at all. And I'm thinking that maybe it might be time to do a complete audit on our books, just to make sure, not accusing anybody of anything. That's the last thing that on my mind, but just to make sure everything is done right. I know in larger towns, they do an audit, like Rotterdam, I'm assuming they do it every year, because they have a police department, they have a much larger budget than what we have. But that's why we actually contacted you to see if we do need a complete audit. And I don't know what the rest of the town board thinks about that.
Well, I think we should review what he did so far. I think we need to do a workshop on that at some point over the summer and review that draft. And I think we'll know a lot more then, and we can decide if we want to.
Do a complete audit.
Yeah, we should have a workshop at some point, maybe before end of summer.
Yeah, you know, doing an audit before doing the AEP agreement is really like, it's like trying to build a house from the roof down. You know, you wanna start with the foundation first, your internal controls, and then go up from there, so. And just to let you know too, our firm had completed an audit for the town many years ago. I was not the partner on that audit. I don't know how many years ago it was, but you
It
had,
was 20 years ago when they did when they put in the water system, I think, 21 years.
I don't think it was that long ago. I can actually check for you, but I wanna say it was probably 2010, maybe a little further back than that.
I think I was told it was when the water system went in, they had to do an audit on it.
Okay. Well, we did do a financial statement audit for you, and also, our firm also does the audit for the town of Rotterdam as well, so I mean, doing an audit for you would not be an issue at all, but I think it's definitely prudent to go through the internal controls first, get these improvised, changed up as needed. And you might be looking through a lot of these and say, well, we don't have the time or the efficiency or the money to do this, so we're just not gonna implement it, which is totally fine. You know, I think focus on the material items, material weaknesses and significant deficiencies, and the rest of the comments you can kind of splice in, you know, as time goes on.
Okay.
Will we get this in hard copy or electronic or both?
Either or, I mean, it's up to you, if you want to find copies.
We could distribute it so that we could all review it and have a month or so to really dig into it before we have any kind of workshop on it.
Yeah, absolutely. What I'll do is I'll work with Ben, and we'll get you as many copies as you need, and send them out to you.
That's
That done. So what I can do is I can finalize this tomorrow, Jen, or actually, I'll have to do it next week as our type
Yeah,
system. I can get this to you in final and have all the paper copies to you as well. And I'm available for questions at any point, so if you want to email me, give me a call, to review any of this, that's totally fine.
Yeah, great, that's good. Appreciate it very much.
God bless.
Thank you.
Now, I got a
Welcome to
question.
stay and listen
How
to-
many people are you talking about that has to inspect all this stuff? How many people are you talking?
How many
Just
people
your
on your
firm
side or my firm?
or how many people are you talking about?
On my firm side, to come
No,
and complete this
well,
game?
all the questions you said that should be inspected, how many people are you talking that we need to do this?
I think you could do it with the people you have. I think it's just, it's a different, you can do it with the people you have and also the town board members as well. So town board members, I always like to see a town that has an involved board, whether it's even you stop by once a month, say, hey, I wanna pull a random sample of transactions. I wanna look at the waterfront account, I wanna see the checks that went out this month. You know, look at those checks, look at the bank statements.
They come, we get them every month, what goes?
Right, exactly. So you could pull the supporting documentation behind those, you can look at the payroll transactions.
But how many people are you talking you wanna hire to do all this?
I don't think you need to hire anybody. I think this can all be done internally. I think this could be done, right, right. I think you can do it internally.
Nicole, you got anything?
I don't think it can be done all at once. I think it's gonna take some time, so like I was saying, focus on the more material items, significant deficiencies, material weaknesses. And then these smaller comments, the manual letter comments, put those in as you maybe get a new board member, maybe get somebody maybe get someone from the town who has financial experience and they wanna help you guys out. They could come in, they could look at some of the items. It's not uncommon to have somebody who's, you know, part of the town, somebody who's just got some extra time, maybe they're retired and they have a financial background, they can come in and say, hey, here's something that I noticed as well, they will do that.
How much are you gonna charge to do this?
To do what? The audit? An audit down the road?
Yeah,
That would depend. I mean, that would depend on when you want the audit done, what level of service we have to give you. I mean, audits for small municipalities, they range from, they're typically about $6,000 to $7,000, depending if it's a multi-year contract as well. So if that's a 3-year contract, if it's a 1-year contract, that typically involves a lot more work, so the fee is gonna be higher.
But you're saying there's no rush on that right now?
I'm doing an
We
audit,
should
no,
be
you have
doing
no,
that.
yeah, you have no outside requirement to complete an audit.
Yeah.
There's no filings that you have to do with the state, with the comptroller's office. But if all of a sudden you did, let's say you got a large federal grant over $750,000, you would then have to do a federal single audit. We'd have to do an audit at that
Right.
point. So you could call me up and say, hey, we've got this huge grant, we have to do an audit, and I would come and help you out.
Our job right now is to digest what you've got so far.
Exactly, yep. Go through
And
the
that'll be
comments,
plenty for us to do for,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's
Sure,
gonna take
sure.
time. It's not something that I think you can do all at once. I
Right.
don't think it's just, you're not gonna, snap your fingers and have it done. But
right.
Ben?
I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
I'm all set, thanks, Jeff.
Okay, thank you.
Still the Port of Money Valley.
So the AUP was 4,300 or 41?
Yeah, we approved that, remember?
We approved that part.
Yes, but he didn't do
But
any of it.
all this other stuff that,
There
all
won't be-
these
there
talking
won't be a
about.
lot of cost for the rest of that stuff. This is basically on us. We're the managers, we're gonna review
Yeah,
this.
we're gonna do everything else, he's not really doing anything else.
We'll do this as a board, as
So
a
what he
collective.
did was, he's gonna give us the report for everything he did, that we paid for. And then we implement everything else, and then unless we need him for something else, then he'll come in and do more.
And the books. I don't know how anybody else feels about that, Ben.
Sounds good.
No, it's, I mean, I'm a perfect example. I mean, one day I'm out chopping wood and mowing fields, the next day I'm in a hospital. If that was my job, I'd be out of business for months. I couldn't do it, and that can happen to anybody. Happened to me, can happen to your grandpa, can happen to anybody. I don't, so you never know. Somebody gets sick, they get hospitalized, they have problems, the job can't get done. So we need to have backup.
So you wanna get together with Crystal
Yeah.
and work?
Sounds good.
Okay, I'll talk to Isla about it, and maybe both of you can get together and, follow up on this. Any other questions on it? Okay, let's go back to, privileges of the floor then. The floor is open.
Maureen Pennington, my wife Gloria, and Susan Knott, from the church, Princetown Reformed Church, and Princetown Presbyterian, up on Route 20, and Gifford Church Road. And July 30th of this year, we're celebrating 200 years. And before my mom passed, in 1996 about, she had accumulated a number of scrapbooks that she donated to the town. And I was just inquiring if somehow we could get access to those scrapbooks to see if we could compile some information relative to her knowledge of the church that we can use for the celebration, if they can become available to us.
They be in their vault. More than likely.
I didn't see them in there, but I got Andrew's number. I'm gonna coordinate with Richard and see if maybe the two of us can go through some things together and try to find them. I don't wanna go through the historian's office with him here, so I want him to come in and maybe we can.
I think I might have some photos that are in a book that I own. It's a book that you can get anywhere. I think I got it from Barnes and Noble.
My mother did a number of scrapbooks, so almost each year she would do a complete scrapbook.
Right. Well,
And how many she donated, I have no idea.
wouldn't compare to that, but I'd be happy to dig up what I have on the church.
Okay.
I may have a
I
couple
appreciate it.
pictures in that book, and I'll make copies for you.
Okay.
Well, we'll ask him. We'll go through everything and
Yeah, maybe that can be,
we'll dig things up.
I'm glad that we have a new historian. Look forward to.
So that'll give him his first big job.
And you did do that, you do have that book, don't you?
Yeah, I got that book. I got some pictures, pretty sure I got some pictures of the church in that book. It's, they have the books on every community. Princetown has got its own little book. And, I'll look and see what I have. I put them in the newsletter every once in a while. I don't think I put the church's picture in, but I put other pictures in.
I guess that'd be it. We can make some progress on that, it'd be fine.
I will call you and give you an update.
We certainly appreciate it, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Are they gonna have any special events up there?
Yeah, July 30th.
Oh, good.
Special event.
Good, wonderful.
Yes.
We remember something for years.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
We'll follow up on that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Greer, I know you had something you'd like to,
I'm Greer Pomeroy reporting for the Environmental Committee. And good news, we need more good news these days. And due to the generosity of Taylor French from Worldwide Tire, we actually made $20 on Recycle Day. The situation was that we had some communication glitches both with the tire company and the metal companies. But the outcome was that Taylor French decided to donate the cash that we had collected for the tire fees to this township. So that the amount of the thing was disputed, that the man who came to pick up the tires gave a different count than what our committee members had counted and recounted. So there was a discrepancy. And Taylor French just said the town can keep the the $300.30 that we had collected. They said we could keep that. And their bill said $370, but he solved it by gifting us, and I'm gonna write him a nice thank you note. We also got, the township got $168 from the wire that was donated that Nick Mora took to Tri-City Recycling. And when our metal finally got to Tri-City Recycling, we received $205.80 from that. So that's, I don't know if that's happened before, but I think it's due to the gift. The other thing is that we had to deal with inflation on the price of the seedlings that we give out. So instead of 600 seedlings, we could buy 500 seedlings for the budgeted amount of $650. And the bill was actually $653. So we were $3 over budget on the seedlings, but it doesn't matter because we made $20 overall from the recycling. And it was a beautiful day, and thanks to our clerk, Crystal Cuomo, who was greeting people as they came in and showing them where to go. And we were able to distribute those 500 seedlings to just over 60 families. And then there were more. I think there would have been at least 70 families who got trees if we had more. How we can do that, I'm not sure, but there were, another new thing was that Kathy Nelson and Gloria Tinning surveyed people as to what they would like next year and asked them, what did they want? And it turns out they're more into bushes and flowers than trees. So we're going to change for the will of the people there. That's it. And then next month I should have the yearly report from the committee for you.
Thank you. It was a nice day, actually, a big turnout. I was surprised. I mean, I got here early and there was a lot of people here.
Yes, they thinned out dramatically later on.
Yeah.
But I think we at least equaled the turnout from last year.
I think so, at least.
Greer, you were gonna use the community room for something you have?
Right, and I'll talk about that next month, that we want to do 2 educational sessions. And, and they may be remote, but the idea from the committee was if we could possibly have people on computers here. We'll have to work that out a little more.
What was it you were having us you were gonna do?
2 subjects. One is the committee came up with the idea of having an emergency preparedness course, which has to do with everybody having wind-up radios and how much water do you need and how can you work together as a community to evacuate people, all that kind of stuff. we want to do that. And the other is, how can you get some of this government money for environmental preservation easements and so on? So there's two different topics.
And you're gonna work with Crystal to make sure that.
Right, she gave me the application for the room and all that. But the fellow from Schenectady County Soil and Water, Tyler Levy, he wants to include any Schenectady County resident in his video remote teaching. So we have details to work out. We're thinking in the fall or winter to do that.
Okay. Any questions for Greer?
Well, thanks for all your work, Greer, and everybody else on the committee.
It's a great committee. Everybody does what they say they're gonna do. It's amazing. Wonderful.
I was there with the tractor.
You were. You said you were gonna be, and you were.
Okay. Any others?
Yep, my name is Joel Heck, I live over on Shagbar Court. A couple of us, Jim, we were at the planning board meeting last month, and there was discussion about the solar farm project that is planned for the property on Kelly Station Road. And I just wanted to sort of, I guess, give a plug for that project to the board. I think it's a good thing for the town from a whole number of perspectives. One would be renewable energy. Wherever you fall on the solar spectrum, there's certainly probably some pluses to that. And I think one of the other big advantages, particularly at that site, which is the old the racetrack site, if you're not familiar with where it's going, is that it's completely hidden. So one of the downsides of these solar farms is that visually they're not very attractive. That one will not be seen by anybody but the birds, I think, that are flying over, right? That's about it. So it's really a good project from that perspective. And then I think the other thing, we often think of Princetown as, wanting to hold on to our rural character, when it's quieter. Those are some of the things that really attract those of us who live here to the area. And the racetrack has been sort of a thorn in our side for a number of years. Not just the legal use, but the illegal use, and sort of the attractive nuisance that it has created at that location. So I think with all of those things in place, that I think this is a good project overall for the town, and I just want to encourage the board to support it, to move forward as fast as the town can do that. Because certainly those of us who are nearby residents will really appreciate it, and I think the whole town will benefit overall from having that project move forward. So, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Can I ask just where Jim Ratajczyk, Shagbar Court, Mr. Joel's neighbor, where that sits right now, that process of approval?
The project you're talking about? The project itself, the solar project?
Yes. I mean, you had a public hearing, obviously, with the planning board, and now apparently there's a bonding process, or?
The problem is, there's 2 deeds to that property. Okay? And they gotta put the 2 deeds together to make it 100 acres. That's the problem right now.
Right, and my understanding was that they surveyed it and that has been resolved.
No,
But I don't know if that's the case or not.
no, it has not been resolved.
Okay.
They do not have 100 acres there. When we instituted this 100 acres that you had to have, we did this because at the time, nobody wants the solar projects next to their land,
Mm-hmm.
as you know.
Right.
Nobody wants to look at them. So in order to keep the rural concept of our town, we came up with you had to have 100 acres.
Mm-hmm.
They do not have 100 acres at this point.
Even
They
with the 2
only
pieces?
have 86 acres. They do not follow in the parameters of our law at this present time. They're gonna have to acquire another 14 or 20 acres, or whatever that parcel is next to it. At this point, we can't move forward until Borrego comes up with the extra amount of land. And if we decide to, since we have an ordinance in that we have 100 acres, you have to have that. We can't just allow another municipal or another company to come in and say that, well, you did it for them, you lowered the acreage. What is it gonna be, 85 for them, 50 for the next one? That's why we have 100 acres. If they can acquire the land next to them to equal 100 acres, then it's fine, then the project can go forward. But at this point, you know, they have not acquired that yet. So until they do, you know, the town's not gonna move forward on this project until they do that. And you can understand, that's the reason we put this in, because we've had enough problems with this one up on Florida Road, and that guy's got 500 acres up there. And people are complaining about that, the water coming down on the 5S, heard the neighbors in the neighboring town do not want it. Everybody complains about it. The people in Princetown didn't want to look at it, the neighbors up there. This is a perfect spot for it, but the law, as it says right now, is 100 acres. So unless they can acquire the extra, and I'm in favor of it if they can get the 100 acres, our town is in favor of it.
The whole board is in favor of it.
But they have to acquire the extra acreage. Am I correct in this,
Yeah, that's correct.
Nicole? She's our secretary on the planning board. And unless they acquire the added acreage, it's not gonna happen. This is up to them to go ahead and do this. We've discussed it, the town met with a solar attorney on this, and I put a hold on it because until they come up with the extra acreage, you know, we can't move forward on it. I mean, that's,
This month technically would have been approval,
Yeah,
because you said we had the public hearing last month, so this month, would have been most
Wait,
likely
we did the
approval
approval.
from the planning board, and then, the town board would have done their host agreement. But since we're dealing with the acreage issue, it's just on hold.
okay, because I had heard that there was an issue with the railroad, and that actually the property that was originally 86 was in fact 125 or whatever it is, but it was incorrect in the deed, and so that was, but that has not been corrected, I guess, or resolved at this
we
point.
don't even know who owns that property there.
Oh, so it's sort of unknown,
railroad,
okay.
somebody says nobody knows who owns that property. It's not on the tax map, it's not on anything. And
So acquiring the additional
One of your,
14 acres
somebody went
isn't
down
even
to
possible at the moment because we don't know who owns it? Is that what?
there's
okay.
there's nobody that, on the deeds, it's not on the tax map. I'm assuming maybe if it's the railroad, I can tell you this, they're not going to, give that property up. It's the railroad. I can assure you of that. They don't pay taxes anyway. The railroad doesn't pay taxes on any of the land that they,
Right.
through there. So if they own it, I'm sure they're not gonna say, we're gonna give you an extra 15 acres. That's the problem.
So is the solar company currently working on trying to
Yes,
figure this
they
out?
are.
Is
They're
that
trying
where
to
it is
acquire-
right now?
From what I understand, they're trying to acquire the extra acreage
Oh, I
to
see.
meet this.
Gotcha.
But until they show the town board that they have the proper acreage, we can't move forward.
Right.
And so we put a hold on the, doing a host agreement until they acquire the acreage. I mean, everybody understands, people just don't want these, that's a perfect spot for it, and I'll agree with you. It solves the problem because we've always heard about all of the noise up there, but we just can't say we're gonna lower the acreage and then,
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely understand that if this was, I guess we're just sort of
Would
curious.
that
to
be
see
a
where-
zoning issue?
pardon?
Would that be a zoning issue where you could get a variance for that, or is that a town law?
That's a town law.
It's
We
a
put
town
that
law,
in
so it
effect,
has nothing
yes.
to do with zoning.
No.
We're not giving variances on that. It's, and for good reason, because like Lou said, you give a variance and then it's a can of worms going forward. And everybody in the
Sure.
town of Princetown wants these places limited to 100 acres, because nobody, what we don't want is a carnival on every corner, which is what it would turn into if we didn't have a acreage, minimum acreage requirement.
Everybody wanted to keep the town rural. And that's what we came up with when we came up with this one up in Florida Road. And like I said, they got, I don't know, I think it's 500 acres, don't they, own up there, Doug? And we're still getting complaints on that.
Yeah.
They don't want it. And that's been 4
Next to
years in the
Montgomery
making.
County, and the people, it's in their backyard.
But if nobody owns that piece of property, and Joel says he owns it, he wants to give it to the company,
If somebody owns it, we
It's
just
all
gotta
good, right?
find out.
Somebody owns it, but
So they-
I'm assuming that it might be the railroad. That's what I'm thinking, because if they don't pay taxes on land they own.
Uh-huh.
So they don't pay any, that's what I'm thinking. Somebody has to own it, but I'm assuming it's probably them. I don't know, maybe the neighbors around there would like to give up 15 acres, or I'm sure Borrego would, since the state is paying for all of these solar projects, you know, they would probably get money from the state, which is all taxpayer money anyway, we all know that, so.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
that's where we stand on that.
Okay, well, I appreciate the update and your time on it, and hopefully at some point you will be able to vote on it and approve it moving
Yes.
forward. Thank you.
Okay. Any others? Yes.
Derek on Dwaynesburg Road, Wilkinson. Now, wouldn't Robert Niles have to buy 15 acres if he's the one leasing the property? No. He owns 85.49 acres. So he would have to buy an additional 15 to make it go through, not the solar company lease out acreage next to it. Correct?
You need an extra 15 acres, I think it's 86 acres that's on that parcel, so you actually need 14,
Right,
correct?
but what he's saying is, like, since Niles is the owner, would he have to buy, say, I don't know, say anybody owns that property, wouldn't he have to have that in his name?
Yes.
That's right, so he'd have to
Yes.
buy that property.
So
Yes.
Robert would have to buy 15 acres?
Yes.
That's what he's
Okay.
saying.
I just didn't
For it to
know
be
the
continued.
solar company
Yes.
leased another 15.
Yes,
It has to be
yeah.
part of the deed.
Yep,
Has to be part of the deed.
my house used to be part of that deed. That's why I was asking. Okay.
Okay. Any others? You know, I'd like to thank the sheriff's department. I don't know if we have done that yet. Comes every town board meeting, and we certainly do appreciate it. We extend our gratitude to Dominic too for you allowing you to come to our meetings. We certainly do appreciate having the sheriff's department here at all of our meetings. Any comments? on
And for
that?
everything else they do for us. I know we're on Pangburn Road, which we live off Pangburn Road, and we have a lot of walkers on Pangburn Road, and it's, I'll tell you, they take their lives in their hands, and then we asked the sheriffs if there's anything they could do, and they set up some of the speed control mechanisms where it tells you your speed and everything else, and, you know, that's great. It's slowed things down a little bit, it's made it a little safer for our pedestrians that walk, and we do appreciate it.
They go faster.
I know, I see that thing right away, I think I do is check my
98 miles an hour was registered on that
one,
thing.
yeah, one person,
In
probably
front of
knows.
my house, okay? 98 miles an hour.
They're trying to raise it and see how high they can get it to go.
Yeah.
Well, we do appreciate it, everything that the sheriff's department does over here and come to our meetings. We certainly, our meetings are fairly quiet, so as you know, but we still appreciate it. Thank Dominic for allowing you to come too. We
Yeah,
do-
absolutely.
we do
I
thank you.
enjoy coming. It's good to know what's going on in the community, and, you know, we support the town.
Thank you. As you see, we fly the thin blue line up there on the gazebo. I didn't get a chance to put our signs up today. I came in late and I wanted to get the air conditioning on. I apologize for that. So,
We appreciate everything you do for us. Thank you.
thank you. Any others? Okay, close up privilege of the floor at 8:06. Still haven't changed that clock, haven't
If you want Louis and then you'll have to change it back.
I? Okay, Greer already did ours. Highway, Nick, as you know, is ill. We're all praying for Nick's speedy recovery. Thank everybody for their support for Nick. As you know, he's been ill for, I don't know how long now, but
About a month.
about a month. Hopefully he'll be back up and running again, and he'll be able to attend our meetings, so let's pray for his speedy recovery. Is there anything you'd like to say about him?
He's doing okay. He knows everybody's thinking about him, so he appreciates it.
Okay.
Hanging in there.
Okay. West Blessing, our water department. Gallons pumped, 2,455,900. Maximum daily usage, 276,000. Minimum daily usage, 35,000. Daily average, 79,200. We had the following water main breaks. Again, this just continues. It's a never-ending thing with this thing with these water breaks. And thank Wes and his team for handling this all in a timely manner and keeping the water system up and running with all of the problems we have with it. May 13th, water main break on 1879 Duanesburg Road and drainage ditch next to John, I can't pronounce his last name. Dad's house, resulting in over 1.5 million gallons of leakage. Repaired that evening and into the morning. May 31st, water main break on Muir-Pearson Drive resulted in approximately 250,000 gallons of leakage. Repaired same day. Issues work done. Rooter Drive rehab has been scheduled to begin July 11th. The modification of the booster pump and reprogramming will be scheduled prior to the work beginning. Rehab of the Settles Hill tank will begin approximately 2 weeks after placing the Rooter Drive tank back in service. All meter readings except one for 2021-2022 billing cycle have been obtained. Bills will be finalized and mailed out by the end of June 2022. Just like to thank, like I said, Wesley and his team for all of the work they do, keeping the system up and running with all of the problems that we continue to have with it. But they do an excellent job. And Rick works with him. He's been in the hospital. He's out sick now. We don't know when he's going to be returning to work. We don't have any light duty for him, so he's going to be out until he gets a clearance to come back. Any questions? Ben?
No.
No.
Jim?
I'm good.
Doug?
No.
Nicole?
I'm good.
Okay. Let's see here. Building inspector. Total permits 2. Permits issued 0. Permit inspection fees collected 0. Building inspections 18. Zoning review 1. Fire inspection 0. Final building inspection 0. Certificate of occupancy compliance 1. Bank deposit report 0. Check to supervisor 0. Checkbook balance as of June 14th, 2022, $1,732.24. Activities and zoning 0. Working on planning and zoning as needed. Working on permit, final inspection as needed. Reviewing plans as needed. Thomas Perini, building inspector. Any questions? Ben?
No.
Jim?
No.
No.
Nicole?
No, I'm good.
Okay. You're up, Ben.
Had the Ag and Markets inspection, the yearly inspection. Everything's fine there. And just one call, which was for chickens, but wasn't even in Princetown. It was right across from Plotterkill fire department, and it's on Rotterdam's property, so I let them know about them. Somebody thought they were left behind after a fire in March, which they were, but somebody was apparently taking care of them. But they didn't have any water for a few days, so the lady, I went up there and she brought some water to them, and I talked to Diane Marco from town of Rotterdam, so they had the code enforcement show up to see what was going on. They got a hold of the owner, so that was all. Quiet, I haven't heard anything from dogs, no dog problems with anybody. Nobody calling about any, or no complaints, so it's good. For now.
That's what we like, no complaints.
No complaints. And, oh, one thing, remember that dog we had, I think I mentioned it the last time. The Saint Bernard that would get loose. He is still there. I thought maybe they moved or something, but he is still there. So he's done a good job of keeping the dog contained. I guess he did get out once, and that was it. So that's pretty good for almost a year passing. So he was the only troublemaker we had. So now it's quiet. That's it.
Okay, any questions for Ben?
No.
Ben? Jim?
No.
Okay, thank you, Ben.
Okay,
Doing an excellent job.
Thank you.
like the Maytag repairman. Remember him?
Yeah.
I don't think we have a report from the judge this
We
month.
did, and Michelle apologizes, she was having computer issues today, so she wasn't able to submit a report.
Okay, we do have a report from the assessor's office, but unless you want to read it, Crystal,
I can agree with you, yeah.
if you'd like to read all of this,
You already.
you're more than welcome to.
Sure. So this is the assessment cycle. Taxable status date is March 1st. Per New York State Real Property Tax Law, the assessor is required to value all changes to inventory. Field inspections from the public right-of-way and updates to assessments have been completed. The assessor's office mailed out 41 change of assessment notices to property owners whose assessment was increased for the 2022 assessment roll. The average change was $33,568. The assessor's office received a number of calls regarding the change of assessment notices. All calls were responded to within 24 hours and questions responded to. Out of the discussions with property owners, the assessor reached stipulations for 5 parcels regarding assessment concerns. The Town Board of Assessment Review held their grievance hearing on May 24th, 2022, stating at 4 p.m. Only 2 of the 3 bar members attended. The 2 BAR members attending had to agree on all actions to reach a majority. Letters had been sent to all board members, and the assessor was unable to contact the 3rd member by phone. The 2 BAR members in attendance signed off on 5 stipulations the assessor had reached with property owners. There was 1 walk-in during the meeting. The property owner did not have a completed grievance form, RP-524. The BAR decided to reconvene on June 7th to give the taxpayer a chance to fill out a RP-524 and to reach support his option of a fair assessment of his property. The BAR has not yet reached a decision on this grievance. Sales. The sales market in 2021 has been very active with 27 residential home sales. It has been a seller's market with the average sales price of a residential parcel at $324,300. New construction. The assessor's office continues to work with the town's building inspector during the year to ensure that all improvements are updated on the computer system and that assessments are adjusted as required. Office hours. There is office staffing Monday through Wednesday during normal business hours. The assessor is in the office on Monday mornings or by appointment. The assessor can also be reached anytime at 518-852-8513 or by email at masllc05@gmail.com. Action item. The town needs to increase the number of members on the Board of Assessment Review. It is recommended by the state of New York that municipalities have 5 members on the BAR. Currently there are 3 members, but not all members have turned out for grievance meetings this year. This could result in legal issues regarding property owners' rights to grieve their assessment under the assessor's control. The town board ensure there is trained, qualified BAR that can resolve assessment grievance issues. John Bonanno. Assessor.
Thank you, Crystal. John did send me a text today that they're going to be looking, he wants to meet with me. They need 2 more people, I guess, to serve on that committee. So I don't know if anybody is interested in it or if he has anybody in mind. wants to meet with me next week, I think on Thursday, I think he said he would like to meet with me to discuss it. I don't know if he has anybody else in mind, but I'm assuming that's what this is all about. You know, he said that he's gonna need 2 more people on it. I know he has 3 currently. So, I'll ask him if anybody has, if he's got anybody he wanted to recommend, then we'll go from there. If anybody's interested in serving on it, it's only once a year that they meet.
Do they need any qualifications for,
I
assistant?
think they do have to take a test, if I'm not mistaken,
I mean,
or go for some type of training. I'm not sure on that, but I think they
I mean,
do.
they should have some idea what property is worth.
Yes, I think they do. I'm pretty sure they do. Any questions? Ben? Jim?
I don't have any question. I will say one thing about this, about the town of Princetown though, is of all the communities around us, I'm talking Niskuna, Schenectady, Glenville, Scotia, everybody, thousands and thousands and thousands of apartments are being built. We're like the only area that doesn't have all these apartments being built. Of course, our zoning, the nature of our zoning doesn't really lend itself to that. So the town of Princetown remains this lovely rural place in the middle of communities that are building. It seems like there's no end to apartments being built around here. Every time you see a vacant piece of land, next thing you know, there's frames going up in apartments.
We are very fortunate that it's not happening around town. Rotterdam is loaded.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Yes. Okay, any questions on that? Okay. Buildings and grounds, I really don't have anything new. I'd just like to thank our maintenance man. He's doing an excellent job taking care of the lawns, and he's certainly been an asset to the town. Thank him for that. And actually, I did place the flags up around the poles before Memorial Day, and they'll be up until after Labor Day. So, other than that, no problems with the state police building so far. They've been kind of quiet over there because of what's been going on. So, and the town clerk, Crystal,
Sure. The
you
deputy
got a
town,
report?
I do.
Thank you.
My deputy town clerk, Claudia Andrioli, had to step down due to medical reasons, so this will be her last month. We had a new clerk, deputy clerk start, Wendy Cookingham. So she's been training and she's up and running, so she will continue to take Claudia's place in the afternoons from 1 to 4, just to keep somebody at the window and answering the phones for any resident walk-ins and needs. I also wanted to make an announcement on town hall closures this summer. So we're going to be closed in observance of the following holidays, and there are 2 primary election days. So Monday, June 20th is the federal holiday Juneteenth being observed. And then Tuesday, June 28th is the first primary election day. We have Monday, July 4th, of course, for Independence Day. And then Tuesday, August 23rd is the second primary election day. And as we are a polling place, town hall offices will be closed. That's it.
Okay. Ben?
No.
Jim? Doug, you got anything?
No.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. You're doing an excellent job. You hit the ground running, and we thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, public hearings, we have none. Meeting minutes. It is hereby resolved that meeting minutes of May 10th, 2022 regular town board meeting are approved or as amended. Discussion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Crystal?
Councilman Pavoldi?
Yes.
Councilman Jackaruso?
Yes.
Councilman Gray?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mora? Yes. Supervisor Esposito?
Yes. Resolution passed. General funds claim is hereby resolved that the town board approves claim number 95 in 120 in the amount of $42,134.87. Discussion? Is there a motion?
I'll make it.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Crystal?
Councilman Pavoldi?
Yes.
Councilman Jacaruso?
Yes.
Councilman Gray?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mora?
Yes.
Supervisor Esposito?
Yes. Resolution passed. Water funds claim and hereby resolved the town board approves claim number 54 through 70 in the amount of $4,917.51. Discussion.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Crystal?
Councilman Pavoldi?
Yes.
Councilman Jacaruso?
Yes.
Councilman Gray?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mora?
Yes.
Supervisor Esposito?
Yes. Resolution passed. Trust and agency fund claim is hereby resolved the town board approves claim number 9 in the amount of $3,260.68. Discussion.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councilman Pavoldi?
Yes.
Councilman Jacaruso?
Yes.
Councilman Gray?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mora?
Yes.
Supervisor Esposito?
Yes. Resolution passed. Council members' comments, discussion, concerns? Ben?
I got nothing today.
Jim?
Are we missing a page of resolutions?
No, so are we?
Is that what-
No, just executive session.
No, I don't have any further comments.
Doug?
None.
I'm good.
Okay, I've got nothing. So,
I'll make the motion, we adjourn.
no,
No.
no.
Oh. We're doing more.
Going into executive session to discuss a legal matter. It is hereby resolved the town board enters in an executive session at 8:22. Is there a motion?
I'll make it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Crystal?
Councilman Pavoldi?
Yes.
Councilman Jacaruso?
Yes.
Councilman Gray?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mora?
Yes.
Supervisor Esposito?
Yes, resolution passed. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate your attendance. And I think I gotta turn the air conditioning down just a little bit more.